Shah here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. And today I'm really excited to have Riccardo on with us. Riccardo is one of our students who just finished recruiting recently, and he's graduating in a few months here. And he worked really hard, to say the least, to get this offer. And just super happy for him in terms of everything that he had to overcome. And I just wanted to get him on here to kind of talk to you guys today about his journey and kind of how he got to where he is, so that hopefully you guys can draw some inspiration from it, and it'll help you on your own journey as well. So with that said, Riccardo, I want to first of all thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. And if you don't mind, maybe start things off by just introducing yourself real quick and giving people kind of what your background and your profile is, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Of course, thank you so much, Sam, for the warm intro. So my name is Riccardo. I grew up in Italy, so I'm an international student in the US currently. I studied international economics and finance in Italy at Bocconi University in Milan. But back in those days, I still really wasn't sure what career path to go down, and that's why I later decided to apply to the Masters in Finance program in USC, where I'm currently studying. And at the time, I kind of made this choice, still not knowing what career path I would have gone for. And so it was a bit of a risk I took there. But as soon as I came to the US, I figured out, after talking to people and looking at career resources at USC and whatnot, I figured out that I really wanted to work in investment banking. I thought it was really in line with my personality and my objectives long term. But unfortunately, I was very late to the party because my program started in the summer. It started exactly a year ago, about a year ago. And by then, most of the target bulge brackets, lead boutiques were all almost closed in the process. And so I kind of needed that push start that Wall Street Mastermind was able to give me, and ultimately landing my full-time job here in the US in investment banking. And I'm happy to discuss how you guys helped me and my process, how it's been.
Gotcha. So that's great. So you're an international student from Italy, and then your MSF program. You came here to study your master's in finance at USC, and that program started, I guess, what, August of 2022?
Exactly.
So it's August of 2022, and I know a lot of MSF programs are 1 year, but I think the USC one is 1.5, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's why your graduation date is December
December.
of 2023, which basically means that you either needed a summer 2023 internship that will convert into a full-time offer, or you needed a full-time offer that would start after December of 2023, essentially.
Exactly. So very tricky situation for me. Definitely not the standard junior summer internship and senior full-time.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, by the time you had come to us, it was, I think, like end of March of
Yeah.
2023. So it was really like summer was only like 2 months away. And so it was like very late for getting the summer internship, especially as an international student. Like at that point, I think all the bigger banks that typically sponsor interns were already done hiring for summer 2023, right? So what did you do then for summer 2023 then? Because it was so late for that. Like, did you have anything uh, lined up already, or what was the situation?
Yeah. No, I remember I had when I came to you guys, I had just secured a summer internship, and so my rationale for joining you guys at the time was, I knew that the bank I was going into, I wasn't it wasn't really the best one for me on the long term. And so I kind of came to you guys for some help, and kind of selling well that summer experience I had secured, but ultimately to find something better. And ultimately I did, so I'm very happy. But yeah, no, to secure that summer internship, it's been really tough, to be honest. It's been mostly networking, and for anybody who will go through what I went through at that point, when you're so late on the timeline, just my biggest tip would be just to network as much as you can, talk to as many people as possible. once those bulge bracket or elite boutiques are closed hiring for the summer, there's not really much you can do about it. I mean, yeah, I guess you can, keep connected with your connections at those banks, but it's once they close their process, it's tough for new positions to open up for a summer internship. And so I would recommend doing what I did, just network with the smaller banks, which have a bit different needs. Many times they open positions for interns last second because they realize they might need another few interns for the summer or whatnot. And
Yeah,
so that's what I did. I had a good friend of mine, refer me to this boutique bank where I worked in the summer. And nothing. I luckily they were still looking for a couple of interns. I went through the recruiting process. It was nothing crazy, and ultimately managed to land that internship. But once again, my objective was going to a better, more prestigious bank, and you guys helped me do that.
gotcha. So I guess on that note, people are probably wondering like, what was the offer that you got in the end? Where are you going to be going for full time?
Yeah, I'll be going to Greif and Co, which I'm sure many of the listeners won't be familiar with, but nonetheless, it's a very prestigious boutique bank in LA. It's situated in downtown LA in the U.S. Tower Bank, 65th floor, and the CEO is a very successful investment banker born and raised in LA. He founded this bank in 1992, and their bread and butter is sell side M&A. They've worked with very prestigious clients such as Coca-Cola, Lululemon, and have very good deal flow. They close. They don't take on a lot of deals, but they do close all the deals they take on. They're very strict on their due diligence process for choosing their clients. But after this 8 round interview process I've been through with them, I realize it's a huge opportunity. It's only about a 9 people bank, but nonetheless, all of the bankers, they have like at least 2 years of experience in sell side M&A. So I feel like a learning curve couldn't be steeper than this. Obviously, the biggest perk I believe of being in a boutique bank is that you get exposure to all the steps of the process, and that's what I'll be getting these months or even years. So I'm very excited. Honestly, I wouldn't trade this over any other boutique bank. Maybe down the line one day I'll try to recruit for an elite boutique bank, but that's about the only type of bank I would exchange this opportunity for.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we had another student who his slightly different situation, but his name is Paul. He came to us after he had already graduated and he was already working as an auditor at KPMG. So he was in accounting and he wanted to switch into investment banking. And then so we helped him lateral. He also went to a boutique bank, which a lot of times I think people think, oh, boutique bank, small bank, like I don't want to work there. But the funny thing is and that was only like, I don't know, probably maybe 3, 4 years ago. And he messaged me recently just to show me, he's like, hey, check out my new promotion. And he sent me the link to their bank's website. And he was already made VP.
Oh,
And he's only been in banking for like 3 or 4 years. And I remember back when like maybe he was a year in, I we had like a lateral opportunity because one of the alumni in Wall Street Mastermind, I think he was working at Piper at the time, and they were looking for a lateral hire. This was during COVID when everyone had crazy deal flow and everybody was understaffed. And then so he asked me if I knew anyone that would be interested. And then so I had reached out to Paul thinking like, hey, maybe he wants to go to a bigger bank. And then Paul actually turned me down. I was like, oh no, yeah, I'm not interested. I'm getting paid a lot here.
yeah.
Like he's like, I'm making more here than I would be making at a bank like Piper. And I was like, oh, how much are you making? And I think at the time he was making, I forgot, it was like 250K or something. And he was like basically an analyst, right? And I was like, wow, how are you making so much money? And just, I guess like point of story is like at the smaller banks, it's there's a lot more variance in terms of like when you go to a bigger bank, the promotion timeline is relatively fixed. How much you get paid is relatively fixed. Like there's like very tight ranges. Like analyst one gets paid this much, analyst two gets paid this much. Like, and it's almost very similar no matter where you're at. At the smaller banks, when it's like 10 people or whatever, there's a lot more flexibility. It's like if someone's good, the benefit is if someone's good, they can move up a lot faster because they don't have all these like rigid rules. And like also because there's less people, if the firm does well, the bonus pool is being split by a lot fewer people, and then so you can have a much more outsized returns on like how much you get paid, right? And so I think it's like it can be a good or a bad thing, but a lot of that comes down to the quality of the firm, like you said, and then also like how good of a performer you're going to be on the job, right? And so
For sure. I completely agree with you, Sam. Obviously, like, there's boutiques and boutiques. Like, you can't obviously generalize all boutiques have great compensation. No, there are some boutiques who hardly close deals. Instead, there are other boutiques who are, have very good clients, have very good team, have very strong talent, and get those deals in. They close them, and as you said, at the end of the year, they that's the bonus they have. They only have to split it in 8 people as opposed to thousands and thousands. So it's as you said, really, if you can go for a well respected boutique that has a strong deal flow, then I think the compensation in many cases is even better than the larger banks. And once again, I think I repeat myself here, but I think a great thing also is, in a boutique bank, because you're less people, you're exposed to all the steps of the process. Whereas I've heard many times from friends that, for example, at the bulge banks, some people are just, an analyst is just staffed on, there's an analyst in charge of just dealing with the data room in a deal, or an analyst just in charge of dealing with the public comps, or I like this fact that as in a boutique, you're in the process from the start to the end. It's definitely a very steep learning curve.
yeah,
So
for
very
sure.
happy.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So I guess let's let's go back to like the beginning of your journey, right? Because um you decided you wanted to do, it sounds like you didn't decide you want to do banking until after you got to USC, right? And then um between the time you started at USC, which is like August 2022, until when you joined Wall Street Mastermind, which is like end of March in 2023, there's like a 8 or 9 month period there. What were you doing in terms of investment banking recruiting, or how are you preparing for the process prior to joining Wall Street National? Like, what were some of the resources you were using, or people who you had that were helping you, or I don't know what you did, but like, can you talk about that a little bit?
No, for sure. So, first of all, I was lucky enough of always having studied finance. So, I had a pretty good grasp on valuation methodologies. In general, macroeconomics, I've always followed a lot. I've always also, since I started my undergrad, I started investing some of my savings. So I always, had a sense of how the economy works, of what's the effect of interest rates on the economy, stuff like that, inflation, unemployment, all this stuff. I knew written pretty well how it worked. So had a strong finance background. Nonetheless, I didn't know the investment banking technicals very well. And so I kind of joined this association at USC, meant for the people in my master's, called the Masters in Finance Association. And I was assigned to a mentor who was supposed to help me through my IB recruiting. And this guy, he already had a full-time offer at City. Like, he was just enjoying his time, and I feel like he didn't really want to spend too much time preparing me, so he was just enjoying his last semester of studies. And so he didn't really do much to help me. He just gave me the 400 questions guide, told me, yeah, you need to learn this, you need to network. He just showed me very quickly how I should reach out to people. LinkedIn. Like, I think that before joining Wall Street Mastermind, I was only reaching out to people on LinkedIn, which I was pretty surprised, because sometimes it had good response rates. Sometimes I had even received responses from like managing directors.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I was a bit lost, though. I was a bit I didn't really have a clear path in front of me, and which I later developed with you guys. I was just like a bit hitting walls here and there. Oh, I need to know all the questions on 400 guide, or oh, I need to network as much as possible. But you know, it was a bit of a messy path. Like, wasn't really sure where I was going. I knew I really wanted that job, but also in terms of technicals, you know, if you just go through the 400 questions guide and just memorize the answers, you'll never be prepared as well as you know, going through the technical Wall Street Mastermind course, which really gives you a much more deep understanding of what are the technicals and why they're meaningful, and you know how they apply to the day-to-day job. Because you know, the end of the day, a 400 IB questions guide, like, yeah, it's great, but I feel like you need much more to really get a grasp of like what's going on in investment banking, why these technicals are important, like how do they relate to deals, how do they relate to, you know, what happened in the past. These are all things that your course gives, which you know makes everything much clearer, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, I totally agree with you. I think like this is an experience that a lot of our students have had, which is I think a lot of times people say, oh, you know, I'm just gonna get help from the upperclassmen at school who have already gone through the process. And we always talk about like, yeah, you should absolutely do that. Like that's all fine and great. But the issue is a lot of times you're gonna find that, to your point, like these people just went through a very grueling process themselves and they finally got their offer. And the last thing anyone who is just recruit for banking wants to do is go through banking recruiting again, right? Because
Of
it's just that
course,
one process. And so even if they're your friend, like they might help you a little bit, but they're, to be honest, they're just not going to be nearly as invested in your outcome as you would be, right?
of course,
Or they're not going to be nearly as invested in your outcome as you would want them to be, because obviously to you at this point in time, like getting the job is everything. That's like your number one goal. To them, this is like almost the last thing they want to think about. They might spend what 30 minutes talking to you and it's like do this, do this, do this, and they're like everything they give you is like very high level, and you kind of know like, okay, yeah, these are the things I need to do. Yeah, I need to learn technicals. Yeah, I need to network. Yeah, I need to do like XYZ. But then like the question is like not just the what, it's the how, like the step by step, like a lot of the devils in the details, like it's very nuanced, right? And especially for something like networking or even for technicals, like if you're not precise with what you're how you're answering the question, or if you're not precise with how you're writing your emails or how you're doing your outreach, a lot of times that's the difference between getting the outcome you want versus not, right? And so
for
we can't
sure.
just kind of like hand wave it and be like, oh yeah, like I'm just gonna do it this way. It's you have to know exactly what you're doing, right? And so um, I guess that's a good segue then into, or maybe you kind of already started talking about it a little bit, but you know, the question I was going to ask you is like, it sounds like when you came to us, you had already lined up like a summer internship at an investment bank, and then so a question that a lot of people might have is like, and then you know you're in this association, you have this mentor, okay, yeah, he wasn't super helpful, but I feel like a lot of people in your situation might tell themselves like, yeah, I'm in a good spot. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. I'll be fine. So like, what was it that made you want to join something like Wall Street Mastermind or want to invest in a program like this, as opposed to just, I don't know, continuing down the path that you were already on?
No, for sure. I feel that the main reason was that I was really, you know, I was a bit mad with myself. I was really thinking to myself, damn, if I had, you know, if I had started recruiting and doing things right the moment had been accepted into USC, I would have probably got into a much better investment banking internship. And I felt like I had all that it took to land a really good spot. So I was like, this time around, I want to really do things well. You know, I walked you through how I recruited. It was a bit of a messy way to recruit. It wasn't very step by step as you should. And so I was like, okay, now I have a summer IB internship. Now I could potentially recruit for full time on a in a timely manner, the way it's supposed to be. But this time I want to do it to the best of my abilities, you know, having everything perfect, having my CV perfect, having my behaviorals perfect, having my technicals perfect. Like, I want to be the most competitive candidate as possible. And,
Mhm.
I had been following you guys for a while. I also had a few friends that, had already joined Wall Street Mastermind. So I knew for a fact that it was quality. And,
Mhm.
because I had this summer IB internship and I was really thinking big for my full time, I thought this could be this could be a perfect time to join, with the purpose of landing a good full time job in IB.
Gotcha. So long story short, you've been through the process once on your own already, and you kind of learned what worked well and what didn't work well. And then this time, you knew this was kind of your last shot, and so you want to make it your best shot, and you didn't want to like leave anything on the table, basically.
Exactly, exactly.
I
Because
think,
I was on time with full time recruiting, because usually full time recruiting is these months, August, September, or even October. I thought this time around I'm in time. Let me do it as well as I can.
yeah, and I think generally speaking, like that's the right mindset that people need to have, right? Like even for summer internship recruiting, it's like yeah, you can recruit again for full time, but as I'm sure we'll talk about in a second, like full time recruiting is way harder than summer internship
Yeah,
recruiting. So it's like, and
it's
full
tough.
time recruiting is not guaranteed. Like this summer for people who did a summer 2023 internship and they try to recruit for full time, like so many people didn't get return offers, and there's so few jobs on the street that
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of people are
crazy.
struggling to get full time offers right now, right? So it's like even when
Crazy.
you approach just the summer internship recruiting process, you should approach it as if that is maybe your last chance so that you can avoid having to recruit full time if you don't need to recruit for full time, right? But like, if you can't and you have to recruit for full time, then that certainly is definitely your last opportunity. And you want to, I think, like rather than thinking about it like, hey, what's the bare minimum that I have to do to just get by? What's this kind of people's mentality when they're like, oh, I don't really need help. I'll just do this on my own. I think the better mentality to have is like, hey, this is really important. This is my career. It's very consequential. And I want to put my best foot forward and have no regrets no matter what. Right. Because if you know you've already done everything you can, then whatever happens, happens. And
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
it doesn't work out, then you're like, well, I did everything I can. So I don't have to ever think back and wonder like, oh, would have, could have, should have, like, right? And versus like, if you don't do everything you can, you're like, oh, I'm going to do this on my own, and you mess up or you don't get the outcome that you want, then you have to always wonder like, oh, should I actually have gotten help? And if I did get help, would my life be different right now? And that's just a horrible place to be, right? Um, so so you decided to join the program. Did you invest in this program on your own? Did you have to get your parents to help you with it? Like,
Yeah, no, I had my parents to help me with this.
got it. And was it like hard to convince them to help you with it, or was that an easy conversation, difficult conversation? Like, do they even know what investment making is? Like,
No, yeah, I mean, so my parents come from a kind of a finance background, like definitely not investment banking, but they had they were somewhat familiar with IB. I mean, IB is obviously not a huge industry in Italy. Like we only have investment banks in Milan, for example, like Rome, which is the capital city where I'm from. We don't even have investment banks there. So definitely it's a more niche industry in Italy, but because I had done finance and for my undergrad, I kind of spoke to them about it once or twice, but nothing too serious. But no, the real reason, the real way I managed to convince them was that I pretty much for my internship I had a long commute. I had to go all the way from downtown LA all the way to Santa Monica, which is pretty far. So originally, me and my parents had agreed, okay, I'm gonna rent a car for the summer. But then after talking to some of the analysts at the bank, I realized that I could have just went by train, which of course not ideal going in a train in LA, dressed in a suit because it could be a little bit dangerous. But anyways, I was just like I told my parents this, and mom and dad, instead of giving me that amount of money to rent the car in the summer, I think it would be much more beneficial for me to if you could give me that same amount of money but invest it in myself for this program I've heard about. And if you don't think it's legit, I can show you the videos that are on their website. Even XYZ of my friends joined it, and it was very successful for them as well. So yeah, I'd much rather invest that money into myself than for a car in the summer when I can just get a train to go to the office. So
that's
that's how it works.
that's such a cool example because um, it's funny because you know I think a lot of people in your situation they would think the other way, which is they'll think, well, I gotta have a car. You know, like a car is a necessity, right? Like a lot of people would think that way. And so I gotta make my car payment, so I can't invest in something like this. But actually, the way you thought, and I agree with you, which is if you really think long term, you made some
Yeah.
short term sacrifices where it was less convenient for you over the summer because you didn't have a car in exchange for a long-term benefit of having a better career. And in the grand scheme of things, this is way more valuable than having a bit more convenience for a couple of months,
No,
right?
100%. Like in the grand scheme of things, for me, like the opportunity cost, it wasn't even like it was much more skewed towards a Wall Street mastermind than having wow a car for a summer as opposed to landing my dream job.
No, I want to give you, I really want to give you props for that though, because I seriously, I've met many students that have thought about it the opposite way. And I think that the ability to delay gratification is a really important quality in people who are successful, right? A lot of times you have to make short-term sacrifices to uh, really reap the rewards long term. And so I think that's basically what you did. So you came into Wall Street Mastermind then, like, let's talk a little bit about like what you did, because we've been talking about like how you prepped prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind. Then you joined in, you know, late March, and I think you got your offer in like August, right? So it's April, May, June, July, like maybe 4.5 months. For the 4.5 month period that you went through recruiting with us, what were you doing in terms of recruiting prep, and like, or how did your approach change, I guess? What was different about it? Because I think a lot of people, um that's the question that they always have, is like, well, what's the big difference, like versus if I just did this on my own? Like everything that I need to learn in terms of technicals isn't all the same. It's all the same concepts as what's in the 400 questions guide, right? Like my resume is my resume. The experience is not going to change. Like, can you talk a little bit about kind of what difference this made for you, I guess?
Okay, for sure. So first thing was the resume. Like that's the resume was something I was always a bit insecure of. Like wasn't sure about the formatting. I wasn't sure about if my bullet points were relevant enough. I wasn't sure about my word choices. Like I had a lot of uncertainties surrounding my resume, and then that was exactly the first thing we did. I went through you guys through the resume check multiple times. We really made it perfect together, and that already having a CV which all the Wall Street mastermind coaches had looked through and told me that it was good already gave me a huge boost of confidence, which I really needed. And then from there, I honestly went through all the lectures online, went through all the modules, like all of them, even the ones on how to make your offer the best it can be, which was really helpful to go through. For example, because I remember one of the classes in that module explained very detailed on how to approach full-time recruiting, so that was extremely helpful for me. And also, as you said, one thing is just reading through the 400 questions guide, and one thing is going through the technical mastery course that you've prepared, which I think that if you really go through it many times, it just gives you a really solid all around understanding of investment banking fundamentals and technicals and how to apply them. And just one of the things I really liked about the technical module was that you were always giving real life examples. Once again, 400 questions guide, it hardly gives you real life examples or real life examples of companies that apply to that question, for example, or scenarios that apply to that question. You were able to give a lot of concrete examples that just made the understanding much better. So yeah, first thing, resume. Second thing, got really good with technicals and behaviorals. And then I think the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest resources of Wall Street Mastermind is the ability to constantly talk to you guys who you've all extremely successful and made it through the IB process, and some of you guys already went into PE or whatever, but you guys are all very familiar with how the process works, and you guys made other students break into IB. So I always followed your tips because I think they were great in helping me out whether it be, asking you guys a question on, oh, how should I write the email to this guy, or how should I dress up for this coffee chat, or how should I prepare for deals in the tech industry. You guys were always there for me, and that was a huge game changer. That was really a huge game changer. But as I said, the mentor I used to have would hardly answer my text messages.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really there for me. You guys were there for me all the time. I remember even in like extreme situations. I remember when I was in New York, desperately running through coffee shots around the city. I knew that I could text you guys and ask, last minute questions. Oh, how should I approach this guy? What should I ask him? And you guys were always there, and that was a huge game changer. And also, another huge game changer was being able to do mock interview with you guys. Once again, one thing is receiving feedback from a friend and from your evaluation class after a mock interview. One thing is receiving feedback from you guys, who obviously you guys are unbiased. You guys will grill if you have to, which is great because it makes you learn a lot. And always receive great feedback from you guys. And I think yeah, that's the most invaluable part of Wall Street Mastermind. Having apart from the modules, obviously having you guys there always ready to help, and give always really good tips and recommendations, and how to strategize the recruiting and whatnot was a great part of the process.
Yeah, it sounds like the biggest difference maker really is just the real-time feedback uh anytime you need it, and being able to like have a team of experienced coaches who really understand the process that you can ask questions to anytime, like even if you're running through New York City, even if you have a coffee chat coming up, even if you are about to send an email or whatever. Like there's all sorts of things that are constantly happening when you're recruiting, and everything's very fast paced, and a lot of times you just need a response right away, and you don't have a lot of time to go and figure things out, or do a bunch of research, or you might not even be able to find an answer if you did, or your mentor might not be responsive. And so having a team like that in your corner, I guess, it was probably like the biggest difference maker for you. Sounds like.
For
um
sure, for sure.
and I guess, you know because like we mentioned this earlier, like full-time recruiting was extremely tough this year, right? So like a lot of the people that finished the summer internship, they didn't get return offers, and then they're all recruiting. And so like in terms of supply demand, there was way more supply, or sorry, there was way more demand. And then in terms of supply, in terms of the number of jobs, there were very few jobs, because a lot of these groups had low offer rates. They couldn't even bring back their own interns, so they're not looking for new people. And then coupled with the fact that you're an international student, and so most of the time, if you're an international student, you're more limited to like the bigger banks that will actually sponsor. In your case, obviously, you found Rife and Co, and they're a smaller boutique, but they were still willing to hire you. How were you able to kind of like, I guess, find this opportunity and like just recruit successfully in this type of environment, which was, it was just very challenging for even U.S. citizens, not to mention international students, I guess.
No, for sure. I'll start by saying that thanks to you guys, like I even had other opportunities in the pipeline, like following your tips and following your recommendations and following, the technical course. Like I had already interviewed for another boutique bank, always in LA, but much less attractive than Greif and Co. Nonetheless, I also, after joining you guys, I went through the process with this other bank, and got an offer from them as well. So that was great. Also, having the possibility to weigh out two offers was a great opportunity. And then also, apart from that, I also got the opportunity to interview for a very important, prestigious, larger bank, which you can also almost consider a bulge bracket. I've interviewed for them about a week ago, and so waiting to hear back. But super happy with what I have right now, so happy with that. But that still could be, I could just still hear back from them. But just to show that thanks to you guys, not only did I find Greif, but I also found these other two opportunities. And who knows, maybe in the next weeks I'll get the chance to interview for even other banks. But once again, I'm super happy with what I have right now. But yeah, no, for Greif, I think I got even luckier, because I remember it was just one of my days of my summer internship. I go back home, just super tired. I just lamb on the couch and I start reading through the general chat of Wall Street Mastermind, and I
Yeah.
read about this fall paid IB internship opportunity, and I read the name of the bank, and I was just already there. I was like, oh, probably a lot of these students applied. Like, do I have a competitive advantage for this position or something? And then I look up on the internet Greif and Co. and I find out that it was based in LA. I found out that the CEO went to USC. I found out that the Wall Street Mastermind alum who had reached out to you is currently doing an MBA at USC. So at that moment, I was like, okay, this is a huge opportunity I have in front of me. I did a bit more research about Greif and discovered like that they were a legit, really good bank, much better than where I worked at this summer for sure. And I realized, damn, this is a huge opportunity. And then from there, I connected with the Wall Street Mastermind alum. We had a great call. From there, he put me in the process for their interview, and from there, I had 3 phone interviews. Had to go to their office 2 times for a super day, and then from there, I don't know if you remember, Sam, but I also had to take a phone interview from an airport in Greece,
I
which
definitely
was
remember.
which was a bit awful, but ultimately they decided to give me an offer, and I'm super happy for that. And once again, all throughout my process, you know, questions about, how should I follow up to this guy who interviewed me, question about how should I show up to the super day, question about, what sort of follow-up questions should I ask them, question about, what technicals should I focus on for this last interview. You guys were there all the time, and you made the process, I'm not going to say easy, because it was a very hard process, but definitely super resourceful, and made the process pretty smooth from my side.
Yeah, it's never going to be easy. No, we always tell people like we can't make the process easy,
No.
but what we try to do is simplify it and make it simple so that you don't have to do a lot of trial and error and a bunch of guesswork, right? You want to make sure that you know what you're doing is the right stuff. And if you're doing the right stuff and you're putting in the right amount of effort, then everything else will just take care of itself, right? But you obviously you still have to go out and earn it. So that's awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's like I'm really glad that you got this offer because like that's when Thomas, which is the alum that reached out about this opportunity, like that kind of stuff happens all the time where our alumni will when their firms are hiring, they'll come back and the first place they'll go is to the Wall Street Mastermind Network because they know there's a huge community of students here who are very passionate about banking and are very well prepared and qualified, and also makes them look good when they refer candidates that are good, and those candidates end up getting the job, and so it's just this entire community. I think people are just very helpful to each other, and we love that, right? And then also like people tell their friends about us, and then their friends show like you heard about us too. A couple of your friends that were in the program too, and we love that, right? Because I think investment banking can be such a grueling and lonely process as is, and I think a lot of people try to go through it on their own, and um, it's tough, and I think, and also like depending on the school you go to, like I find like the more of a target school you go to, the more cutthroat it is. Like people kind of like keep everything to themselves and they don't want to help the other people because they view you as their competition. And so it's nice to have a place where, there's a group of people who all have similar goals, but everyone's working together and helping each other out and winning together. And I think, a rising tide lifts all boats, and it's better to be able to collaborate versus to just only compete, right? And so I really love that aspect of our community, and it's I think it's a beautiful thing to see it play out here, where Thomas was able to, obviously like you had to go out and win the job, but like he was able to provide this opportunity for you and the other folks in the program. So I guess I know we're kind of out of time, so just like one last question that I always like to ask is, now that you've gone through this process successfully and honestly, you overcame some pretty crazy odds, I would say, given your profile and your situation and where you were in the timeline. Like, in hindsight, now knowing what you know, what's like the best piece of advice that you have for people who are just going through recruiting now, or maybe will be going through recruiting soon, or maybe it's someone who has a similar profile as you. Like, was there something that you learned along the way that was just really really impactful for you that you want to kind of pass down to other people?
No, for sure. I think for IB recruiting, the number one thing is your mentality, and I sort of acquired this mentality throughout the process. But I'm super grateful I have it now, and I do regret that I didn't have this mentality from the start. I think these you gave some really good words, Sam, in one of your lectures, in which you explained how you had to recruit during the 2008 summer, which I can, or 2007 summer, which I can't even imagine how competitive must have been back in the days. So that for me really showed me that, hell, if Sam made it in the middle of a global recession, the worst one we've had in decades, like, then it means that if you really put all your effort into it, you can really do it. So I guess, yeah, this idea that, you can't control the economy, like you can't control, so you cannot start inventing excuses. You cannot make up excuses for why you're not getting that offer. If you really want that offer, you're gonna get it. It's just a matter of mentality, putting the reps in, being prepared on all your different CV, the technicals, behaviorals. If you have all of that, then there's no excuses. Then it's just a matter of how much you grind. Because really, if there's people who recruited in summer of 2007, if there's people who are recruiting right now, it means that, everybody can do it. So yeah, no, for me it was really, even in terms of mentality, before joining Wall Street Mastermind, or before recruiting for IB, I was always a person that, an obstacle gets in the way, that, oh damn, because that obstacle got in the way, it means I can't get to the end. And I was always very good at inventing excuses as to why I wouldn't reach an objective. But
Mm.
after going through all of this, I realized that really, making up excuses is for people who don't have enough motivation. So yeah, I guess it's all about that mentality. If you go through an interview process, don't get the offer, don't collapse. Just keep on grinding and use it as experience. Use everything you get in the process as experience. Use all the rejections as experience. Learn from them. Realize what made you not get that offer, and then just keep on building that experience. And eventually, unless you give up, you're gonna get that offer eventually.
That's good stuff, man. And you're absolutely right. Like, mindset is so important. And um, there are a lot of people that just they give up too easily, right? I think like when you run into an obstacle, then I think the majority of people, their reaction is just like, oh, I guess I can't go this way. I have to stop, turn around, go back, whatever.
Exactly.
And some people, their natural reaction when they hit an obstacle is like, okay, how do I get around this? Can I go over it? Can I go around it? Can I go under? Like, whatever. And it's like, I mean, this is metaphorically speaking, but the point is like, just because there's an obstacle in front of you, like, that doesn't mean that you have to stop, right? Obstacle is something to be overcome, but not everyone thinks that way. And so I think even that shift in mindset, I mean, yes, it helped you be successful with IB recruiting, but I think that's for life in general. If you maintain that mentality, you will always be successful. You'll always be able to achieve your goals eventually, right? Maybe not always on the first try, maybe not right away, but like eventually, if you work at it hard enough, like you should be able to get there, right? And so I think that's a really really great piece of advice that you're giving. And so guys, if you're still with us here, and you're currently going through the recruiting process, maybe you're struggling, maybe you try stuff on your own, you didn't get like the most optimal outcome that you were looking for. Maybe you have other obstacles going against you, like maybe you're late in the recruiting timeline, maybe you're an international student, maybe whatever. Like, there's all these reasons why people might tell you why you can't do something. But if you're like Riccardo, and you're the type of person who wants to put your best foot forward, you don't want to leave anything on the table, you want to make your last shot your best shot, and you want to make sure that you have the best team possible in your corner supporting you every step of the way, then I want to encourage you to reach out to us, and you can schedule a call with our team. We usually do a free consultation first, just to learn more about your situation, to see what it is that you even need help with, and then, like, depending on what you tell us, if it is something that we can actually help you with, we'll walk you through kind of like what that might look like. And even if we don't think we're the best fit to help you, like we'll still at least give you some advice on just what we think you should do with or without us, right? And so either way, like our goal is for you to just walk away with at least some value from talking to us. And so if that's something that you're interested in, you can go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you and helping you. All right. So with that said, we're gonna wrap it up here, guys. And Riccardo, I want to thank you again for coming on here and taking the time to share your story with everyone. I think this will definitely inspire a lot of people and hopefully get them one step closer to achieving their dreams. But beyond that, I want to congratulate you on an amazing offer.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam.
Look forward to seeing what you accomplish, starting in January once you start full time. And but yeah, that's gonna be it for today, guys. And we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time, all right.